take a quick look at what is happening on the markets right now with the Dow down 188 points. It is the big name banks that are really taking a tumble today on the markets. You've got Citigroup, B of A, Morgan Stanley, Goldman, JP Morgan Chase, all the big names that would be affected by the president's proposal that was made today. All of those names are trading down. But look at the smaller banks that would not be affected by the president's proposal. BB&T, New York Community Bank Corp, Regions, SunTrust, all of these names are actually jumping up. The street views that maybe these names will benefit if you do have restrictions on the bigger names. But is that going to happen, first and foremost? And what does it mean for your 401k, which could have a strong piece of these big financial names in it? Back with us, Peter Barnes, Mark DeCambry, and, of course, Erica Payne. So I want to go back to you, Erica. You wanted to make a point, and I want to let you go ahead and continue that point.
The point I'd like to make is that Obama has had a Rooseveltian moment. After the stock market crash of 1929, Roosevelt put in a set of restrictions and regulations that stabilized the financial sector and led to a great era of prosperity in the United States. And that's exactly the same thing that's happening now. So they will put back in Glass-Steagall-like restrictions on these banks. Right. The capital requirements will be higher. So instead of 1 to 30, it'll maybe go back to historic levels of 12 to 1.
Well, then I'm curious then what happens then, guys, to the bigger names. Liz, what happens? Like, you're on the Goldman Sachs story today.
Well, I mean, what happens to the bigger names?
Well, Erica, let me bring in another guest on this one because Liz, I'm wondering then if your Goldman or your Morgan Stanleys, then they say, forget it, we don't want to be a bank. They signed up a year and a half ago because it made sense at the time.
Well, they want to be a bank to get avail themselves of bailout programs. But
go back to being an investment bank.
This is not a Rooseveltian moment. This is a highly contradictory moment because on Christmas Eve, the government, the White House and the Congress agreed to lift the capital, basically the pipeline into the Treasury that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac enjoy. In other words,
equity, the hedge fund activity, you're saying that's what that is.
Who needs to be shrunk to protect taxpayers? What happens was on Christmas Eve, they have unlimited now access to Treasury money, taxpayer money. That pipeline got lifted. They also are allowed to blow out the size of their mortgage portfolio. Remember, it's supposed to be cut back by 10%. One of these companies said more taxpayer losses will occur because of these moves. So who's at risk here from Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac? Everybody. Are we by curtailing the bank activities here? Will it put taxpayers at risk?
And listen, Mark DeCambry, I wanted to go back to you. You did a great piece on Goldman and the bonuses issue, but a lot of the employees at Goldman were complaining this is a liquidity problem for them because of the way the bonuses were handed out. This presidential proposal today could be a liquidity problem for America.
Well, I mean, not necessarily. I mean, again, I think this is to address some of the risk-taking. And I think just to finish off a point I was making earlier when Liz was talking about prop trading, I think some of these investment banks still aren't clear as to what this rule means. I think people are still reading it through because even though when you talk about, Goldman taking risk on behalf of its clients, it's unclear if they're going to count that as prop trading or if it's going to be strictly your prop trading business.
Peter?
They are not going to count. They're not going to count.
So is that the case?
If you're in your role as a fiduciary who is making investments on behalf of a client, these rules would not cover that. This is only going to be trading basically for their own accounts, for their own profits. For example, at JP Morgan Chase, non-deposit money that they may have raised through the repo market or through selling bonds or through commercial paper or through bank notes and using that money to trade in order to increase the bank profits on behalf of shareholders, frankly, and themselves because they benefit. If the stock price goes up, they get higher bonuses and higher compensation.
James has been quietly listening to all of this here in the studio real quick. James, your initial assessment of what you're hearing as we kind of go through the details.
Yeah, my initial assessment is this is a bad day and nothing more. I don't want to pick on Erica because she's being very chipper, but it's not a Rooseveltian moment because it's not a moment at all. If he wanted to make this a Rooseveltian moment, he would have made it an executive order. Market would be down 10 times as much as it is today.
And just something about Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and not give them an unlimited pipeline.
But for people who follow the inside of politics, this is actually an enormous thing has just happened. You have just seen a sea change.
And
I think that we can point back to Scott Brown, to his election in Massachusetts, and I think what President Obama has done is he has sent a signal that he is going to be following the advice of Paul Volcker and reforming this financial system so it works for all Americans. And so what you're going to see over the next 10 months, and I think conservative Republicans should be very worried going into the 2010 election now, because you are going to see leadership from this president on this critical issue. It's great.
I respect the heck out of you, but I think there's more Democrats that are nervous today than there are Republicans out there with the midterm elections.
Watching the weeks that come up.
All right.
Watch the weeks that come up.
Thank you so much, Erica Payne. You always make your points. Thank you very much. And of course, to Mark DeCambry from the Post, I love your stuff. Peter Barnes, thank you very much.